Next up, we got Fluffy Hernandez versus Josh Fremd. Now, you know what I love about this fight? Guys like Josh who've just, been around the regional scene, long amateur career, fought their way, the nitty gritty style, LFA veteran in a big way. He actually got a title shot in the LFA promotion, but Gregory Rodriguez ended up knocking him out, and that's where you saw Gregory Rodriguez's career just take off completely. Taking with Contender Series into the title shot, into now what we see as a guy that's really trying to find his way as a long-time UFC fighter. And then you got Josh, who's just been, climbing those ranks, and, coming off of that loss, you look at the way he fought in his most recent fight. The way you can kind of describe Josh is he really likes the technical fights, right? I think that for him, getting into those very grueling back and forwards with strong, power punchers is just not his way to go. I think he tends to lose those battles, but when he's able to pick his shots, when he can attack those calf kicks, find ways to come back up top, even look for takedowns, right? So in the last fight, you saw him really use his striking to set things up, but then the moment he found that opportunity where he even turned an opponent, he rushed him, grabbed him from the back, was able to kind of slam him to the ground, and just locked up a rear naked extremely quickly. And those are the things from these kind of fighters you want to see. You really like the idea of, being able to switch things up. That to me is what you define as cage or ring IQ, right? It's the ability to judge a moment on your feet in quick thinking. And that's where you saw him really succeed in that last fight. And that's where, going back to the Rodriguez fight, is he needs to avoid those positions in those areas, because if you look at the way he fights, especially as the fight goes on, it makes more sense for him to also tire out his opponent and start to find those very technical and grueling style of fights, for rounds, say, 2 and 3. And you talk about a guy like Fluffy. I mean, the dude has not only never finished someone since his first fight via punches, but you think about the fact that he hasn't actually been finished completely on the feet. Kevin Holland got the knee and finished on the ground via ground and pound, but I feel like his decision-making seems to be always his most questionable feat, right? Before, when marijuana was, not allowed to be smoked by, UFC fighters, he actually beat Jordan Wright on the Dana White Contender Series, but then overturned because of that marijuana. And Jordan Wright ended up getting a small stint with UFC, which did not go very well. Probably a betting person's favorite fighter's favorite fighter. I mean, the way I see it is, in this fight, Anthony has so much going for him. The fact that Rodolfo fight was back in February of last year blows my mind. It feels like time flew since then. One of my favorite calls I've ever had, to be quite honest. And you look at the way he fights, right? It's just decision making. He lost via anaconda choke, but it's one of his favorite submissions. It's just that timing. I think, Park, for example, had really good timing there. And that's where you're going to see improvements. I think for a fighter, there's no better place to just learn from your mistakes. And I think when you lock that, did I say Park as the loss? No, he beat Park via an anaconda choke after losing to Marcus Perez via anaconda choke in the second round. So again, just to correct that, but I really think that if the opportunity comes around for any type of arm choke, he's going to be looking for it. And the thing with Fremd that I love is his ability to mix it up is what's going to keep him in this fight. So I really see this one just being one of those very non-big name chess matches, which end up being some of the best, options for fight of the night. I think if these guys just bring it forward completely, especially if you see that ground game kind of negate itself, this is going to be such a grueling fight for both guys. And I think the attrition, the cardio, all of that kind of stuff is what's going to come into play. And the relationship with, Mark Montoya and Josh Fremd is something that I'm actually really loving going into this fight. You want to kind of see them do well as a team, but, I really love Fluffy in this fight. I think that he's proven that he's got the skill to be in the UFC, especially given the fact that he's only 28. Brendan Allen wins in LFA. These are the kind of guys where you just want to see the decision making get better. And ironically, some of the IQ that we saw from Fremd in his most recent bout, you kind of want to see from Anthony more in his UFC career before those losses start to pile up and just derail his career overall. Again, to lose via anaconda choke to Marcus Perez, but have such a love for that style of fighting, to be the same guy that pulled off a submission, victory over Rodolfo Vieira. It's those are the things that you want him to kind of keep in his mind, because those are the biggest areas of improvement. So I'm going with Anthony as a favorite in this fight. I think a minus 130 line is very fair. I think that there's so many areas where both guys might be able to win from a technical perspective, but Anthony's just a really, really gritty fighter who can exploit a ground game when the opportunity arises. And I think if Fremd can last that first round, and the same thing with Hernandez, we're just going to see a great back and forth. So betting wise, I mean, I don't know which way to go from putting my own money on the table, but I am leaning Anthony Hernandez as a favorite at minus 130, and I think he has a great opportunity to win this fight. So let's take a look here. We've got Anthony Hernandez, minus 170 opener, minus 200 right now. With Fremd coming in as a plus 140 opening dog, now sitting at about plus 160, plus 170. So, I mean, we're pretty close to the line, per se, from a fight capping perspective. But, I mean, it's also going into the minus 200s. Good parlay piece if you believe in that level of fighting. But, again, these are the fights you want to be careful of. If there's anything I can tell you, think about how many minus 200s were on that last card. We were really good at picking the right one with Neil Magny, but that's a really funny line, I'm going to say, between minus 200 and minus 250. It's almost like that's how Vegas is trying to pull you in. It's like there's some value in there for you to take someone you believe that can win, but is it enough for you to really tell yourself he's going to win? Because at minus 200, usually for most people, that's a parlay piece at that point, unless you're putting significant chunks of change, like 5-6 units. But that's where I would just be a little bit careful. Make sure you're sure of yourself if you're going to put in parlay pieces of, Fluffy Hernandez at minus 200. So stay tuned for the next fight coming up next.